country. Over 3 million Britons have now signed a petition calling for a rerun of the referendum, with the number climbing by the hour. Meanwhile, Britain's two main parties are in turmoil.
This morning, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn fired his shadow foreign secretary for planning a coup, prompting 7 members of his shadow cabinet to resign. A growing number of Labour lawmakers have called on Corbyn to resign, and a motion of no confidence in him will be debated later this week. Prime Minister David Cameron's decision to step down has prompted a fierce battle to replace him, with ardent Leave campaigner Boris Johnson tipped to replace him. A majority of Scots now want to break with the United Kingdom. And Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has even raised the possibility of blocking legislation that the British Parliament must pass to seal the country's exit from the EU. On Monday, US Secretary of State John Kerry will meet the EU Foreign Policy Chief in Brussels and the British Foreign Minister in London. The US made it clear during campaigning that it wanted Britain to stay in the EU. Meanwhile, there's heightened anxiety in Asia over global financial stability. This just hours before markets reopen in China, Japan and South Korea.
Now, earlier I spoke to our UK correspondent Dan Whitehead. I asked him what could be expected tomorrow when David Cameron holds his cabinet meeting.
There is a cabinet meeting on Monday, which at the same time there is meetings between the French President François Hollande and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel over in Berlin. These are the first meetings, of course, post this referendum result. In the cabinet meeting, David Cameron really is going to be trying to calm the situation and set an agenda over the 12 weeks over this leadership battle. David Cameron will not be the Prime Minister in 12 weeks' time, so that has to happen relatively swiftly. Who are the contenders? Well, of course, Boris Johnson, the MP, the former London Mayor, prominent Leave campaigner, is the favourite, but we're also looking at the Home Secretary Theresa May, George Osborne, the Chancellor, who's been very quiet. We haven't heard a word from him yet. Those are some of the front runners over who is going to replace the Prime Minister David Cameron. So that'll be an interesting dynamic in that cabinet meeting. He'll be speaking to people, some of whom may likely replace him. But David Cameron will be setting out just how that leadership battle is going to play out. But David Cameron is under increasing pressure from Brussels to get the ball rolling on the UK's exit, and that only happens once he, or whoever the Prime Minister is, formally announces Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. It's the article which says, yes, we're going to leave, and it starts a ticking clock of 2 years. David Cameron has said that will only happen under the new Prime Minister. EU officials are urging it for it to happen on Tuesday. We don't know who's going to win that battle yet. It's going to be a feisty week in British politics.
To Zimbabwe now, where that country's former Vice President Joyce Mujuru says she was fired for challenging dictatorial tendencies within the ruling party. She says ZANU-PF no longer pays attention to the grievances of the majority. Zimbabwe's economy has been spiraling downward, and there is a growing disenchantment among citizens over corruption. Mujuru is canvassing for support for her new political party, which is set to challenge ZANU-PF in the